An anonymous memorandum on the next conclave has been circulating in Rome, and there's backlash against the removal of a popular bishop in Puerto Rico. Joining me now for analysis of these stories and more is the Papal Posse, Editor-in-Chief of the Catholic Thing, Robert Royal from Washington, and canon lawyer and priest of the Archdiocese of New York, Father GERALD Murray, joins us from Manhattan. I want to take your take, on this video call between Pope Francis and Patriarch Kirill. I just discussed it with the Archbishop. It is the first known communication between the two leaders since this invasion began. In a Vatican statement about the call, it read, the Church, the Pope agreed with the Patriarch that the Church must not use the language of politics, but the language of Jesus. Those who pay the bill for the war are the people, the Pope said. It is the Russian soldiers, and it is the people who are bombed and die. Father Jerry, how significant was this call, and does it blunt Kirill's theological justification for Putin's invasion?
It is significant because the Pope is directly challenging the spiritual leader of the Russian Orthodox Church, who is a known ally and has praised Putin and, in fact, has defended and supported this war, and I think disgracefully put himself into the position of justifying what are war crimes being committed by the Russian army in the Ukraine. So it's significant for that. The Pope brought up the issue that, the Church, no war, there's never a just war. And I would certainly say that's true as regards the Russian invasion here. This is unjust. But the Ukrainians fighting back is completely just. So I think we have to remember that.
Yeah, Bob, we exchanged some emails when this first dropped. You had some concerns about that formulation.
Yeah, I agree with Father that this question of holy wars, which invokes the ideas of crusades and whatnot, and actually Kirill has actually spoken about the Russian invasion as a holy war against the decadence of the West, as we've talked about before on other shows. But in a situation like this, I always like it for world leaders to be very precise in their language. And, we can share the Holy Father's expansive rejection of war, especially at a time when Ukrainians are fighting and dying to defend themselves. And this is women, children largely, and as well as the armies. To say that all wars are unjust, and a while ago, a couple of weeks ago, he actually mentioned, he said, all wars leave the world worse off than when they started. If that were true, then defensive wars or wars to carry out instances of justice, when we went into Afghanistan to stop the people who carried out 9/11, would that have been impermissible? You really want to be careful at a moment like this. Now, it's great that he confronted Kirill. That had to be said as one Christian leader to another. But we really want to be cautious about this, and we can't say that we've developed to the point that we valued peace so highly that it makes it look like we're pacifist. We're not. We're people who believe that it's important to have the tool, not the first tool in the box, but a tool to carry out a just war, to defend innocence.
Okay, this call took place after the weekly general audience, where Pope Francis referenced a possible atomic war, what he called a final catastrophe. At the conclusion, he recited a prayer asking God to have mercy and bring peace to the war in Ukraine, yet he hasn't condemned Russia by name. Bob, do you think Pope Francis asked Kirill at any point to use his influence with Putin to demand an end to this war?
Well, I'd be very surprised if he didn't, in one way or another. I think that this language about all wars are unjust is meant to be able to say that without having to confront him openly. I wish we had the actual tape of this encounter, and maybe someday when we do, we'll find out kind of the emotionalism that may have transpired between the two of them. But sure, look, if he wants to avoid using the word Russia, during World War II, the popes were very careful not to appear to take sides because it brought back kind of repercussions on Catholics and other Christians. If he doesn't want to do that, in a way, it's understandable. But everybody knows that he's sent a couple of archbishops to Ukraine. He's been sending help to Ukraine. He's not on the side of Russia. So it's very clear where he stands.
Father, Patriarch Kirill said he appreciated the Holy See's moderate tone. Kirill has blamed the West for its liberal values and infringing on a divide between, or rather creating a divide between Russia and Ukraine. Is that moderate tone effective, Father? And what lessons can we learn from the way John Paul II dealt with communism?
Well, moral clarity, as Bob said, is really what the Pope should be issuing. And he did that the other day when he said, stop the massacre. And, this has been during a week in which the Russians bombed a theater in Mariupol, which was a shelter for women and children. They've also committed other atrocities, Russian soldiers shooting at civilians trying to flee, trying to get help. So, the Pope has spoken directly. I hope he'll continue to do so. And it's good that we identify that there is absolutely no justification on a religious or moral basis for what Putin has done. He's invaded a country. He's killing its civilians. He's trying to destroy every city that won't surrender. This is an unjust way of carrying out warfare. The war is unjust in itself. The measures and means he's doing are unjust. So, more when the Pope speaks out, the Ukrainians are encouraged that they are being supported by the leader of the Catholic Church.
I want to talk about this consecration of Russia. People have been talking about this for years. It springs from a request of a vision of the Virgin Mary made to 3 children in Fatima in 1917. Our foundress, Mother Mary Angelica, often spoke about this consecration of Russia on her show. Watch.
I shall come to ask the consecration of Russia to my Immaculate Heart and a communion of reparation on the first Saturday, the first 5 Saturdays. If we don't do this, Russia will spread her errors throughout the world, and she has, causing wars and persecutions of the church, and she has. The good will be martyred, and they have. But my Immaculate Heart, in the end, will triumph, and that is our hope. The Holy Father will consecrate Russia to me, and she will be converted, and a period of peace will be granted.
Next week, Pope Francis will consecrate Russia and Ukraine. It'll take place in St. Peter's Basilica during a celebration of penance. This followed a request by the Latin Rite bishops of Ukraine. Father Jerry, why do you think Pope Francis is doing this? When Sister Lucia affirmed the consecration was completed, I mean, does it have to do with John Paul II consecrating Russia and the world, and not specifically Russia back in '84?
I don't think that's what the Pope is thinking about, because I think he agrees with the judgment the Holy See's already made, that the consecration Our Lady requested of Fatima has been accomplished. Sister Lucia said that. No, a consecration can be renewed, and I think that's what this is a case of, because, again, when Sister Lucia revealed the secret that Our Lady said to her, that Russia would spread her errors and there would be great destruction, that's what's happening still. So we ask again, Almighty God, through the intercession of His Most Holy Mother, to grant us the gift of peace, to end this horrendous violence, and to, basically ask heaven to step in and help us in a way that we're not able to ourselves. God's grace is so powerful.
Yeah. Bob, the Virgin Mary has a deep, long, rooted religious and cultural history in Russia. In fact, Patriarch Kirill recently presented the head of the Russian National Guard, a large icon of the Virgin Mary, ironically. As I asked the Archbishop, how will this consecration be read in Russia, do you think? And is there a Vatican diplomatic role between the parties here that you foresee?
Well, I'd like to think that there is. I don't know how much weight a pope carries in Russia. There's a long anti-papal history in Russian Orthodoxy as well. If you read Dostoevsky and some of these other authors, they kind of look askance at what the popes and the Latin West in general has done. But look, I think it's a good thing. It is kind of neutral. He's praying for both countries. I would point out that after the consecration in 1984 is when the Soviet Union started to fall apart. It finally did in what John Paul II called the annus mirabilis, the miraculous or miracle year of 1989. And then we did have a period of peace, which Our Lady predicted. It's just that we didn't get the whole thing. And what we face now is not communism, that kind of militant atheism, but a kind of a militant imperialism. It's not even just Russian nationalism. It's really trying to reconstruct the Russian empire. So maybe there's yet a second stage to this revelation, that we've got to confront something deep in the Russian soul, as well as that atheistic communism.
Gents, I want to follow up on a story we covered when you were last here, the removal of Bishop Daniel Fernandez Torres from his diocese in Puerto Rico. He was dismissed without due canonical process, we should add, for his defense of religious objection to vaccine mandates. Now, since his dismissal, Puerto Rican Catholics and Protestants have taken to the streets. They've gathered in protest outside the cathedral in San Juan to support Bishop Fernandez. Father Jerry, the bishop's dismissal is certainly irregular, according to canon law. Does he have any recourse to fight his removal?
Well, Raymond, I agree this is an unjust removal. And by the way, the Holy See has not given any reasons for this. They simply announced that he had been relieved of the diocese, of being the diocesan bishop there. He wrote, Bishop Daniel Fernandez wrote a memo or a letter to the people of Arecibo, and he told them that the nuncio told him that he was being removed because he wasn't really cooperative with the other bishops, and he'd been disobedient to the Holy Father. But according to what we know, or what Bishop Fernandez said, the nuncio said, you haven't committed any canonical crime. So, I think the Holy Father's made a tremendous error here in removing a bishop, treating him essentially as a branch manager who can be lifted out without cause, because the bishops are the successors of the apostles. And if they don't commit canonical crimes or are otherwise unable to carry out their function, they should be left in office and supported. And I'll just say this lastly, Raymond. If it's wrong for a bishop to disagree with his fellow bishops, then we've entered into the twilight zone. The church has to be an area where freedom of speech to promote the good is not only encouraged, but praised.
Yeah. Bob, what does this unjust action say to other bishops considering defending conscience rights regarding COVID or any other issue? I mean, Bishop Fernandez has said that he was dismissed because he was, quote, not in sufficient communion with the Puerto Rican bishops on this issue, and alleged insubordination of the Pope.
Well, we've talked about this before, but there's really an incoherence at the heart of this sort of thing, because, to quote again, even the Holy Father has talked about unity without uniformity. There can be differences of opinion. And what we see here seems to be a relatively minor disagreement over a public policy question having to do with COVID or whatever it was, unlike what we see in Germany, for example, where there's outright heresy being promoted by numbers of bishops. And this, it just seems to me that in situations like this, because of the tremendous amount of mistrust that there is about all institutions, including the church these days, the church has to show great transparency in these circumstances. If this bishop has done something that is so serious that it warrants his removal, then fine, tell us what that is. And then he can dispute it or not dispute it, but at least the faithful will know, and other bishops will know why that happened. To do this and just make it look like it's an arbitrary exercise of power, I think damages the church's own credibility, its own appearance of being consistent and respectful of all opinions within the church, both among laity and among bishops.
Cardinal Angelo Becciu, who we've been covering for many, many weeks here, gave testimony on Thursday at the Vatican's criminal financial trial. This has been going on for quite some time. He's facing charges of embezzlement, obstruction of justice. The Cardinal continues to insist he's being smeared in the media. There's also the odd transaction of 2 million euros sent to Australia, the nature of which has yet to be fully explained. It might be linked to Cardinal George Pell's prosecution for sex abuse. Father Jerry, your thoughts on the Cardinal's testimony today? He is claiming he was innocent. Today he spoke primarily about money sent to a diocese that his brother ran the aid operation therein.
Well, Cardinal Becciu has a lot to answer for, given the charges made by the Vatican prosecutors, given the testimony or evidence that's already been published regarding his collaborators, regarding his refusal to discuss what that €2 million payment to essentially a lobbying firm involved in security back office type work. Why were they getting 2 million euros in Australia at the time when Cardinal Pell was under prosecution? I'm very happy that the Vatican is carrying out the trial, because there has to be a public display not only of the pursuit of criminality when it's alleged, but that the process is fair. So Becciu can have his say, the witnesses can have their say, and then the prosecutors make their case. I think that's the best way for this to be handled.
Bob, very quickly, the prosecutor said today he was unprepared to cross-examine Becciu. He says, oh, we've got COVID cases in the office. How is this possible at this point? Very quickly.
Well, we've said this before. The justice system in the Vatican is very chaotic, and they have many, many cases. And you would think that somehow, if they even were going to meet in court, that they would actually have the papers prepared and they would have alerted the judges and whatnot. But somehow, only, I hate to say this, but only in the Vatican.
Only in the Vatican is right. I want to move to Germany. Cardinal Brandmüller says the German synodal way is, quote, on the wrong track. It's lost in nothingness, he said. He's responding to a draft text approved at the meeting in February. It voted for supporting same-sex union blessings, changes in the catechism on homosexuality, and the ordination of women. Priestly celibacy will be optional in their version of things, and lay involvement in the election of new bishops is called for. The Cardinal published his commentary on a German website and said it is important to look back at the end of the 19th century when modernism emerged. What do you think he means by that, Father Jerry? Why look there?
Well, I would hope he's looked there so we could have remedies to fight modernism in the 21st century. But I'm afraid, and that's, Cardinal Brandmüller is, of course, in defending the truth, but is that message going to be received by Cardinal Marx and Bishop Batzing? Right now, it looks like if the Germans get their way, the Synod on Synodality should be renamed the Synod on Homosexuality, because that is basically all they talk about. They're talking constantly about the Church's teaching being wrong, being hurtful, apologizing, and then saying that they're going to bless people living together in homosexual unions. Let's be very clear. The Catholic Church's teaching on this is of divine origin. It comes from the sacred scriptures. It is as clear as a bell, and it cannot be changed. And to give these hopes to people that the Catholics are going to change it, this is a great disservice to the truth. And it's very upsetting that, the bishop in Puerto Rico, who was a traditional type bishop, he preached the doctrine, he lived the faith, he gets removed because other Puerto Rican bishops are unhappy with him. Yet the bishops in Germany can contradict the tradition and doctrine of the faith, and they're left in office. This is a major source of scandal in the life of the Church right now.
Picking up what you said, Cardinal Marx in Germany celebrated Mass this past weekend, marking 20 years of what he called queer worship and pastoral service. He said he desires an inclusive church. Where is Rome here, Bob?
Well, I wish we knew, because I think that Rome has put out some signals to the Germans that they're on the wrong path. At least the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith has done that. And we have had Cardinal Pell recently say that the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith has to come forward and criticize both Cardinal Hollerich and Bishop Batzing for preaching heresy, outright heresy that's been, absolutely clearly defined, as Father was just saying. And they do it on these utterly preposterous grounds. The Cardinal Hollerich actually said that the science and sociology has disproven that the Church's stance on homosexuality is correct. He's saying that it's wrong. Well, look, we know how, we didn't need COVID really to do this, but COVID has made it clear in many people's minds how easy it is to politicize science, even scientific research, what gets looked into. And for a cardinal of the Roman Catholic Church, who is about to be the head of the upcoming Synod on Synodality, to say that science has disproved Catholic doctrine, it's preposterous. And in Germany, they talk about the teaching on homosexuality as prejudice and bias. I mean, I don't know the situation in Germany. I don't know if the churches are protected by the kind of First Amendment protections that we have here in the United States. But if what they're worried about is that they're going to be accused of hate crimes or something, then I think that they have to step forward and be brave. But it just seems to me that the argument is being made on preposterous grounds. And Rome really needs to speak out clearly about why it is that it's being faithful to the gospel, and actually going all the way back to Genesis. Male and female,
Father Jerry,
he created them.
As Bob said, Cardinal Pell is asking for the Congregation for the Doctrine of Faith to reprimand those cardinals. Can they do that? Will they do that?
They absolutely can, because that's the remit or the mandate in church law of the Congregation of Doctrine of the Faith, to defend the faith against error and heresy. And we got to remember this: the salvation of the souls of not only those bishops and cardinals, but of all the people who follow them are at stake. And that's really what the church's mission is, the salvation of souls. It's not an intellectual debate to say, well, what are we going to believe in today, tomorrow, and the day after? We have to believe in the truth of Christ day in, day out. And those who contradict it are leading people in the wrong path. So are they going to do it, is your other question. We can only hope and pray, because, you know, when the house is on fire, the firemen should not be looking out the window and figuring out when's their next vacation. They should be getting in their fire trucks and putting the fire out.
Moving on, a memorandum on the next conclave is circulating among cardinals under the pseudonym Demos, which means people in Greek. It lists everything that is perceived to be wrong with the current pontificate. The list is long. We obviously can't verify its authenticity. However, the very fact that it's a rumored document and it's being circulated among cardinals, perhaps even written by a cardinal, is noteworthy. Father Jerry, then Bob, what does this mean for the next conclave, and what did you take from absorbing it?
Yeah, I read this on the website of Sandro Magister, who is, you know, well-known Vatican journalist who is very reliable. And I would say the publication of this indicates that cardinals, or some people trying to influence cardinals, are conscious that as the papacy, you know, winds down, meaning, you know, the likelihood of a conclave is approaching, we don't know how long, but certainly we have to think about the future. And, you know, an honest and thorough look at the life of the church today has to say, have the actions of Pope Francis contributed to the mission of the church flourishing or being damaged? And in certain areas, there's a lot of damage. And, you know, the Latin Mass, Amoris Laetitia, you can go down the list. And then on the level of just management, these arbitrary removal of the bishop in Arecibo, Puerto Rico, is a symbol of, unfortunately, how the pontificate is sort of drifting in the direction of agree with us or we're going to slap you down. That is not Christianity. Christianity is we listen, one brother to the other listens in order that we can both learn.
Bob, your thoughts on this and the fact that it's coming out now?
Yeah, it's clear that there are, when you talk to people in Rome, it's clear that the rumor is that the Pope's health is really pretty bad, and he doesn't really have a long time to go. So the fact that this is circulating among the cardinals, I think we can be fairly confident that it is, tells us that they're really starting to get serious thinking about things. For me, besides the whole list of things that Father Murray just put together, there's one paragraph where it says the primary goal of the next pope should be to restore normality. Now, you know, just to use that word, it gives you a sense of how abnormal so many different things are in the church. And then in that same paragraph, the phrase is used that the next pope has to be somebody who makes it clear that he's faithful to the apostolic tradition. That too, I think, reflects the kinds of ambiguity and uncertainty that have come out of this papacy, not only at the practical level, but even at the high doctrinal level that we see. So this is a pretty radical thing, and I think it's going to make a lot of people think deeply about what the next choice is going to have to be.
Well, and it speaks to the challenges facing the church today in a very, unvarnished way. It's a tough document, but obviously this is where the thinking is now. Gentlemen, we will leave it there. For commentary by Robert Royal and Father Gerald Murray, you can visit thecatholicthing.org and look for a brand new book from Father Gerald Murray. We'll talk about it more in the weeks ahead. Calming the Storm, Navigating the Catholic Church and Society. It's available online and at stores on April 7th. Thank you both.